welcome. I'm Ijoma Honyato tonight. Justice Binta Nyako makes a U-turn on Nnamdi Kanu, rules that his trial will now be open to the public. The Senate names Ahmed Lawan as new Senate leader, even as Ali Ndume expresses surprise at the decision. Police in Kaduna arrest suspected masterminds of the attacks in southern Kaduna as the state government promises to bring them to book. And Donald Trump's Attorney General pick, Jeff Sessions, denies sympathizing with the KKK in a tough Senate confirming hearing.
On Business News tonight, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Yakubu Dogara, promises transparency in the implementation of the budget process.
And on Sports News tonight, FIFA Council unanimously approves World Cup expansion to 48 teams.
We begin tonight in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory, where a federal high court has made a U-turn from its earlier ruling on the trial of self-acclaimed leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, and his co-accused. Justice Binta Nyako, who ordered a secret trial of the accused persons on December the 14th, 2016, today says the trial should be held in the open. But the lawyer to Mr. Kanu, Ifanye Jofo, had a bone to pick with the proceedings. Our correspondent Amaka Okafor reports.
Journalists and other members of the public who had come to witness the trial of self-acclaimed leader of the indigenous people of Biafra and 3 other defendants facing charges of treason and terrorism were confronted by security operatives who barred them from having access to the court premises, despite the ruling of the court that only the witnesses in the case will be shielded and not a secret trial. Shortly after, they were allowed access. They also met resistance by another set of security operatives at the entrance of the court. The journalists and relatives of the defendants managed to make their way into the court premises and were again confronted by blue-screen shields, which blocked them from seeing the trial judge and their lawyers, contrary to the ruling of the court on 14th December last year. This angered the defendants, who shouted at the security operator. At the proceedings, the defendants' counsel informed the court that they had filed an application seeking to quash the charges for lack of merit. However, the prosecutor raised an objection. He told the court that even though he was served less than 24 hours to the case, he was prepared to respond to the motion, and therefore the case should be stood down. The judge, however, adjourned the case to Thursday to enable parties exchange briefs and then hear the motion.
The charge is patently incompetent and defective on the ground that the proof of evidence attached to the charge cannot sustain that charge and does not disclose prima facie case against our client. As such, the matter cannot be set down for trial.
Lawyers to the defendants say they have approached the appeal court because they believe that their clients should not be tried in camera. Amaka Okafor, Channels Television News.
Ahmed Lawan has been named as the new Senate leader, replacing Ali Ndume. At the resumption plenary, Senate President Dr. Bukola Saraki read a letter written to the upper legislative chamber by the All Progressives Congress caucus, informing the lawmakers of its decision to replace Senator Ali Ndume. In a swift reaction, Senator Ndume told journalists that his removal came as a surprise, even to him. The reason for the removal of Senator Ndume was not announced, but recently the senator had told journalists that the non-confirmation of Ibrahim Magu as the EFCC chairman did not amount to a rejection. The Senate spokesman Sabi Abdullahi later restated the Senate's position, insisting the lawmakers rejected Mr. Magu as opposed to Senator Ndume's statement.
The National Assembly has resumed plenary after nearly 4 weeks for the Christmas and New Year holiday. Now, one of the things which federal lawmakers are saying on resumption is that they would give priority attention to the passage and consideration of the MTEF and the 2017 budget.
It is therefore imperative that we immediately begin work earnestly on the MTEF to ensure passage by the end of this week. In the same spirit, consideration and debate on the 2017 budget will immediately follow in the next 3 sitting days of the following week, that is next week.
As legislative proceedings for the day winds down, Senator Saraki announces a change in the leadership of the Senate.
Notice of change of leadership is to inform Your Excellency and the Senate that after several meetings held on Monday, the 9th of January 2017, and upon due deliberation and consultation, the APC caucus of the Senate hereby wish to notify you of the change in the leadership of the Senate, that the new Senate leader be and is now Senator Ahmed Lawan representing Yobe North Central District, Yobe State.
But in a swift reaction, Senator Ali Ndume informs journalists that he is not aware of his removal as Senate leader.
Previously, there hasn't been any issue. I have not been called upon, or I have not been confronted with anything, or I'm not aware of any meeting that was called to either ask me or to, because there is a process, there should be procedure anyway. So this announcement, as I said, came to me as a surprise, as it did to you. And I will find out what that means before we move on.
A source told Channels Television that Senator Ndume was removed because of some of his utterances, one of which was when he debunked the Senate's decision rejecting the confirmation of the acting EFCC boss, Ibrahim Magu. The removal of Senator Ndume may also be an attempt to mend fences with the ruling APC and the president, who had initially recommended that Senator Ahmed Lawan be made majority leader after losing out to Senator Bukola Saraki for the seat of a Senate president. Linda Akibe, Channels Television News.
The Department of State Services says it's arrested 4 suspected members of the Boko Haram sect in the Agege area of Lagos State. Spokesman for the service, Mr. Tony Opio, says the suspects fled to Lagos to evade arrest in Nigeria's northeast region. He gave the names of the suspects as Fanai Hassan, Mutame Hassan, Kologoni Bukar, and Amina Abubakar. Mr. Opuyo has also confirmed the arrest of the self-acclaimed leader of the terror group in Okene, Abdullahi Muhammad, who bears the alias Khuja. The DSS says the suspect is responsible for the coordination of Boko Haram activities in the Okene axis of Kogi State. Staying with security, as some of the alleged masterminds of the attacks in the southern part of Kaduna State have been arrested. The governor of the state, Nasir El-Rufai, revealed this when he visited the Commissioner of Police. He says his administration will ensure that all those involved in the attacks in southern Kaduna will be prosecuted in accordance with the law.
The continuous killings in southern Kaduna have become a source of worry for many, especially the residents and government of Kaduna State. This is the reason authorities are hunting for the culprits and masterminds. Now words have been put into action as some of the suspects are brought before Governor Nasir El-Rufai. The police commissioner promises to rid the state of criminals. For the state to move forward, residents must embrace peace as well as play their roles in assisting the military deal with criminals in the state. That's an admonition from the state governor.
There are more coming. There are many that have run away. Some of the foot soldiers of the crimes, some of the masterminds, we have them in our radar, we'll get them. So yes, there have been some arrests. We don't want to talk about that because the job is still ongoing. All I want to assure the people of Kaduna State and Nigerians is that anyone that commits a crime in this state under my watch will be prosecuted. We will get him. We will ensure that this endless cycle of violence without consequence is over.
At a gathering elsewhere, Muslim clerics support this action. They warn leaders against making statements that can heat up the polity.
These few cases and orders drew the attention of this council to call on the government to arrest and prosecute persons who made inflammatory statements that instigated the crisis. This council is in support of the federal and Kaduna State government in taking any measures legally to deal with any individual or group of persons without fear or favor, with the intention of causing further disturbances or breach of peace in order to have a lasting peace in Kaduna.
With this latest development, it is expected that violence in the area will be curtailed to a great extent and residents will live in peace again.
Staying with the search for peace, hundreds of victims of herdsmen attacks today thronged the Benue State House of Assembly complex. They are demanding that lawmakers pass the open grazing bill, prohibiting which is expected to streamline the activities of herdsmen. Over the last 2 years, clashes between herdsmen and farmers in Benue State have led to several deaths and the destruction of property.
Victims of herdsmen attacks in Benue State, consisting of children and aged women, arrive at the Makurdi Kulov Park bearing placards with different inscriptions. They are here for a peaceful procession to the State House of Assembly to register their grouse over the delay in the passage of a bill against open cattle grazing. They are met by armed policemen led by the Assistant Commissioner of Police in charge of operations and prevented from leaving the park for the planned occupation of the Assembly complex. 3 hours later, the peaceful march, however, commenced. Upon arriving at the Assembly gate, some of the lawmakers engaged members of the group in a war of words in the attempt to deny the protesters access into the Assembly complex. But with the intervention of the Speaker, the aged women, children and other protesters are led into the complex where they state their case.
We are here, Mr. Speaker, and distinguished members of the Benue State House of Assembly, because the cycle of killing usually happens between January and March. And we've been suffering this cycle for the past how many years? Untold number of years. These people seated here are not window dress people, they are not hired crowds. These are IDPs, people who are owners of lands, owners of food crops. Some of them here are widows because their husbands have been torn away from them. Children who are breadwinners have been torn away from them. They are internally displaced peoples among their own land.
The Speaker pleads for more time to enable the lawmakers convene a public hearing on the bill.
I want to assure you that our desire is that as soon as we are done with appropriation law, which will take us a very few weeks from now, the first thing we are going to commence on is the public hearing of this particular bill.
With the promise by the lawmakers to take up the matter, the protesters agreed to back down on the plan to occupy the Assembly, hoping that they will give accelerated hearing on the bill as promised.
Meanwhile, the governors of Benue and Nasarawa states today agreed to visit Agatu local government area in Benue to help resolve the dispute between Fulani herdsmen and Agatu indigents. Both groups have been at loggerheads for the past 5 years over cattle grazing. Briefing newsmen at the government house in Makurdi, Governor Samuel Otom says it's important for both groups to embrace peace and unity for the development of the zone. And on his part, Governor Al-Makura says the scheduled visit on January the 18th will give the Security Council and traditional rulers of both states the opportunity to hear the grievances of those affected by the clashes.
Myself and the governor of Nasarawa State travel to Obagaji, the headquarters of Agatu, to meet with the Agatu people and seek reconciliation between Agatu people and Fulani people so that they can coexist again and live together as brothers and sisters. And whatever are the grievances, the pains that both sides have gotten should be forgotten, should be forgiven, so that we work together for the interests of peace.
And we are resolved and committed to ensuring that whatever it takes in the next few days, a solution must be found. That is why this meeting has been so dispassionate, without sentiments, without any insinuation. That is why only principal officers, desk officers, and security officers who have intelligence about all the problems in this area are in this meeting.
In part 2, after the break, the federal government plans to revitalize 10,000 primary healthcare centers across the country to bring healthcare closer to the grassroots. And that's in a moment. Please stay with us.